after a staggering 29 seasons, the legendary Gregg Popovich has decided to step down as head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. He will now transition to a full-time role as the team's president of basketball operations. Carolina Teague has been covering the Spurs as a beat writer, radio host, and more for 6 years and is the current editor-in-chief of the Spurfect blog. I'm going to bring her in now to talk about Popovich's legacy. So, Carolina, when you think about Pop, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
The first thing that comes to my mind is he's the greatest coach of all time. I know people argue about who could be the greatest coach of all time. You could look at the legacy of Phil Jackson and what he's done with the Bulls and the Lakers, but you could look at also what Coach Gregg Popovich has done. I think the edge that Coach Pop gives is that he was able to build up a team. The San Antonio Spurs were notorious for being able to be building through the draft and through the G League, and they weren't necessarily a team that was all in with these huge superstar players. They were built over time. And I think when you look at the legacy of Gregg Popovich and all the things that people have said about him, whether they're players or former coaches and assistants, they all say that he is the greatest coach. And he's had a huge coaching assistant tree that's come out of what he's done. And he's built so many head coaches. His legacy extends far beyond basketball. As he says, it's bigger than basketball. So greatest coach of all time is the first thing that comes to my mind. And I'm sad he's finally retired.
Yeah, and Pop has had some pretty memorable interactions with the media over the years. So what was it like covering him?
Very intense. The first few years I started covering him, I didn't even ask him a question at all. I would just hold the mic for the reporters because he gives you the biggest, most intense stare down. And sometimes even grown men reporters were afraid to even ask him a question. And you could see the fear and intimidation from his eyes. So a story I'd like to share is the thing that I learned the most and what makes me sad the most is that this past year, Coach Pop taught me something, whether he knows it or not, and that's to look somebody in the eye. So Coach Pop would always give me these super intense stare downs that would go deep into my soul. And it taught me that if I'm going to be a serious journalist in sports, that I have to be able to be confident with what I'm saying and be able to look somebody who knows what they're talking about, the greatest coach of all time, in the eye and give him a valid question that he would like to answer. So once I started staring Coach Pop down straight in the eye, I noticed that a lot of people do not look you in the eye. So shout out to Coach Gregg Popovich for teaching me that real men and real people will stare you down and make eye contact if they're being serious and they respect you.
That's a good one. Yeah, super important. Love him for that. So you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what kind of legacy does he leave for this organization, but also for the NBA as a whole?
I mean, he leaves a legacy that extends, like I said, beyond basketball. So many of his players have said that Coach Pop has not only touched them from a basketball perspective, but he's always taught them this philosophy that what they do is bigger than basketball. And they are very humble. He's taught his players, his coaches to leave their ego at the door. And the Spurs philosophy is you have to kind of you have to be a team player. It's not even a kind of, you have to be a team player if you are going to be part of the San Antonio Spurs organization, because at the end of the day, this is not about you. This is about the team. And that type of philosophy builds a dynasty of championships. And Coach Gregg Popovich is the perfect example of that. He has 5 championships under his belt, and his legacy extends beyond anything we could even imagine.
Yeah, and the Spurs, Popovich will remain in the organization, but the Spurs have named Mitch Johnson their next head coach. So what can you tell us about him, and what do you think he will bring to this organization moving forward?
So my team, Spurfect, Casey, Matt, and Tyler, they're great writers. And one of the things that stands out to us about Coach Mitch Johnson is that he kind of gives us a similar pathway of Eric Spoelstra with the Miami Heat. He kind of had the same similar career path. He filled in when a coach had to come out, and he was able to build with a young team and grow. And so he kind of has that similar career path. But not only that, Coach Mitch Johnson, I think he gets a lot of unfair criticism because Coach Pop got sick early on in the season, and he had to deal and roll with a lot of punches that came their way, whether it was the injury of Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan's injury, the trade with De'Aaron Fox that traded away Trey Jones and Zach Collins, then Victor Wembanyama's injury, and also coming in with that dynamic of a veteran presence like Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul. Coach Mitch Johnson really had his work cut out for him throughout the season. He's been able to roll with the punches, and even though he's a young coach and he makes mistakes that people can, often criticize him about, to me, when you are a first year fill-in coach, he did a fantastic job with all of the things that he was given, and he did a fantastic job filling in for Coach Gregg Popovich. And the Spurs philosophy is they'll fill you in if you put the work in, and he earned his spot as the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, moving forward, it's going to be hard to think about the Spurs without Pop, or at least him on the sidelines. Carolina, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys for having me, as always.